We'll do it live.
Hello and welcome to Under the Sticks, presented by Big Red Cloud. My name is Andy McGeady. Visit www.bigredcloud.com for all your online accounting needs. Joining me today on the show, I have Mr. Sean Holley. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, Andy. Level of excitement beyond unbelievable levels today. I ordered a golf net, a driving net, some 8 weeks ago. Where did it come from? China. When did it arrive? Today. Just when we were allowed to go back on the golf course, my golf net has arrived. I don't need it anymore.
It's all right.
But
These are good problems to have, Sean. Adam, pulling the levers as usual. How are you?
Yeah, all good. We've a week of 20-degree weather here in Dublin for the week, so yeah, looking forward to that.
Yeah, it's going to be good. And first time up on the live show, Miss Lauren Jenkins. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thanks. I thought I was sporting an okay tan, but Sean Holley's outdone me on the golden tan front. So much
I
time
haven't
in
got
the back
much else
garden
to do, Lauren. So you need more time in the garden tomorrow.
Yeah, just is it an osprey tan?
No. I never joined in that nonsense. Look, my hands are not orange.
I'm going to leave that there. Later on, we'll be talking through a couple of things. We'll be going back and looking at the region's all-time 15 as voted for by Pro14 viewers. We'll be talking about the CVC investment in the Guinness Pro14. Now that's done and dusted, we can finally talk about it. Put Adam on the spot in a few things. It's going to be fun. We'll talk about the Emergency World Cup that has been speculated on or reported on in the media, and also the news that Six Nations and SANS are looking at ripping up a few things, and that could be potentially very interesting for rugby. Get your comments in during the show. Adam will be keeping a close eye on those, and I think we'll have a couple of things to plug at the end. But firstly, we have a special guest to come straight in, I think. Ian Keatley, man of Ireland, but currently in Italy. How are you?
Hey Andy, how's things?
Things are all right, but things are grand here. I haven't done much. I've been in my bedroom all the time. But how are you? You've been back to Ireland, and now you're back in Italy again.
Yeah, after our last match for Benetton, we played the Dragons in Wales, and then obviously a lot of stuff happened since then. And I think our Munster and Ulster match got cancelled, so they gave us a week off. So I asked, could I go back to Ireland? And then I got stuck in Ireland for 8 weeks after that, while the coronavirus kind of took over. But then around two and a half weeks ago, me and my wife and my daughter came back over to Italy. We did our 2 weeks quarantine, and then I started back training there on Monday.
What does quarantine look like over there?
Well, during the bad time, it was full lockdown. I've been chatting to a few of the guys over here. They weren't allowed to leave 200 meters from the house. So I think when we talk about what we had to do in Ireland, we were still allowed to leave up to 2 kilometers from our house. I think it was actually it was quite a nice quarantine. But for the last 2 weeks quarantine, I wasn't allowed to leave my at all. So I had to get a few guys to go to the shops for me. We weren't allowed to leave the house, so it was pretty strict now. The last couple of weeks.
Everyone is safe and well is the main thing.
Yeah, exactly. That's the main thing. And listen, it was a short price to pay to make sure that everyone was safe and sound, and thankfully we're safe and sound. And as I said there, we're trying to get back to normal now. We're going into training and going back to training in small groups and social distancing, which is quite weird when you're a rugby player.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, there's now some reports that World Rugby are looking at a few different changes that might be made in conjunction with coming back during a pandemic. Is that filtering through to the players? Like, do you guys have a view on, fewer reset scrums and that lark?
Well, I don't know how much of a say we actually do have on it. I don't know. Maybe it's just hearsay at the moment, but I can't see them completely changing the game. But having said that, it is a great opportunity to maybe eradicate a few scrums, because I know from a supporter's point of view, I think a lot of people complain about reset scrums, but it's such a huge part of the game, and we've gone through safety issues with scrums that hasn't been safe enough, and then they kind of came up with these last rules which has increased safety, but maybe has caused a little bit of a delay in game. So it's trying to get that balance between safety of players, which is probably the most important thing, and then secondly the entertainment level, because obviously people do get frustrated with reset scrums, but it's such a crucial part of the game, and as I say, no scrum, no win. So
it was funny, we were talking last week with Sean about how you keep in contact with players while you're going through something like this. What sort of things have you been doing as a player group and with your coaches just to keep in touch? That's for you, Ian.
Oh, sorry. When I was in Ireland, we kind of had a Zoom call every week, and also we had different challenges. So we had fitness challenges to try and do every week, and we all have like our little mini team groups. So there's like 4 mini team groups, and you all had to do your challenge and all the high scores, and you got points for each high score. So there was kind of like little mini challenges to do, and also we were also given fitness and strength work to do over the last over the duration of time. So it was kind of a little bit of, they tried to add a little bit of fun aspect into the time during obviously quarantine, where I know the boys here in Italy, they really struggled with not really being able to leave their house. So they're trying to make sure that the mental side of it was also being looked after rather than just the physical side.
Yeah, did you feel like you already talked already, like lockdown in Italy was not the same as lockdown here in Ireland?
No.
What are the guys sharing with you?
So I remember one day I rang, we had a big Zoom call, and they were asking me how it was going in Ireland. And I live in Sutton, so Sutton Hope area, and I was telling them that I was allowed to leave 2 kilometers from my house, so which was kind of nice, because up in Hope, obviously you have like the pier, you have the beach, you kind of like you have hotel that you can go for walks, and like there's little forests, there's little ferry trails to bring your daughter to get out of the house and be active. So I kind of told them that, and you could just see it in their faces. They were like, they were gutted looking at me when I was just telling them what quarantine was like in Ireland, or lockdown was like in Ireland. And then they talked to them, and they weren't allowed like leave the house. A few of them would leave the house, try and like just do a little run, and like the police would be there. They said there was a huge police presence everywhere. Like even if you left 400 meters from your house, they felt like there was a policeman there waiting for you. So it was kind of talking to them, and when I came back there, like, oh, how was your holiday? So it's kind of so it's completely different. As when I saw a lockdown in Ireland, when you could still leave 2 kilometers from your house, I think, listen, I wouldn't say we were lucky with what happened in Ireland, but in my personal opinion, I thought they managed it pretty well from a mental point of view, rather than just locking in the whole country and shutting everything down, which I think a lot of people were asking for. They kind of got a good balance between stopping movement and keeping mental health and fitness levels, their mental side of it pretty strong. Yeah,
now this is where I am going to bring Sean in.
Well, firstly, and well done on the way you've approached your move to Benetton. We've had a viewer there, John Lachey, say, great to see Ian Keatley making a difference at Benetton. You really have embraced it and making a huge difference. The question I wanted to ask was, now you've gone back to training, it's early days yet, and I can imagine your position, it would be conditioning, separated a little bit, maybe a bit of passing, a bit of kicking back and forth as a kicker. What's the feeling like with the players about when the time will come to tackle, to get into rucks, scrums, mauls, what's the feeling in the group, about how, I would imagine there's some people will just crack on and there's others who are like, well, I'm a bit wary about that.
Thanks, Sean, for that. Yeah, so at the moment, it's very, they're doing we're being very cautious at the moment. So we're all given one ball each. We're not allowed to pass the ball to each other at the moment for social distancing rules. We're all given one ball. When we arrive to training every day, our temperatures are checked, and every Monday we're actually getting a finger prick blood test for COVID. And I was a bit skeptical of it because I was wondering, why is everyone not doing this? Why is everyone getting the swabs of their mouth and the nose? But I feel we've done a bit of research, and it's meant to be pretty high accuracy rate. So you wait 10 minutes and then you find out if you've had coronavirus, or if you have had it, or if you have it. So that's what's going on with Benetton at the moment. So at the moment it's very relaxed, but I think lads are I think they're just looking forward to getting back into it, because, as I said, they've been locked up here for 8-10 weeks, and I think they're looking forward to getting back into it. I think with the measures Benetton has taken, that we're all getting tests every week, and any machine that we use or every ball that we use, like, they make sure that we clean it down straight after. So they're being very cautious, being very proactive. And I think when a time comes to getting back into proper rugby, I think as long as the right measures are taken, with checks being weekly and temperature checks being daily, I think we'll feel comfortable going back into it.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I guess there are players who are all in different situations. I was listening to Danny Kerr speaking earlier in the week about, there are a lot of players out there with pregnant girlfriends, pregnant wives. Do you feel like there you are all on the same page, and you have been in lockdown for such a long time that you're just desperate to get out there? Or there's some maybe who, if they've got anyone at home, perhaps in a more vulnerable situation than others, that, maybe are a bit cautious because it's such a unique scenario we're in.
Yeah, and my wife is pregnant at the moment, so she's due at the end of September. So I did have that cautious feeling when we were coming back over to Italy. They wanted me to fly to Rome and then drive up, but it turned out the flights got cancelled. So I actually had to fly from Dublin to Amsterdam to Milan, and drive from Milan to things. So I was very cautious. I was very worried of bringing my wife, who is, as I said there, is pregnant, and my daughter over. But we looked into a lot of it. We looked into the airlines, and we made sure that they were taking the proper precautions, which I think every airline business is now at the moment. But there is people who are taking coronavirus. Like, I think everyone has taken it seriously, of course, because it is quite serious. But you have your different approaches. People are a bit more relaxed, and people are, as you say, people are quite scared and quite worried because they have loved ones at home and who may have an underlying condition. So I suppose, how do you cater for everyone? I think there is always going to be people who are going to be scared, and then there's going to be people who are just going to want to get back into it. So I don't know, how do you cater for everyone? It just has to be a general consensus among everyone, and maybe there has to be something signed that for everyone to agree to continue.
I don't know. I think everyone just has to sort of accept that there's a huge unknown here,
Yeah.
And it's in every industry. All we can do is just figure out, does this feel right given the risks that we know are there? Are we going into it with our eyes open together? And you know what? It mightn't work well for everyone, but we're doing it together. And I think a lot of people are going through the same struggle. Good question coming in from Serge Walters. Ian, who's your favourite training buddy?
In the Benetton team?
Let's go ever.
Jamie Mack. I've been around a long time, so training buddy ever. Probably Simon Zebo. He's just so funny. He just lives on a different planet. But do you know what? No matter how you're feeling, he'd always make you smile and pick you up. So
Yeah, it's important to have those guys in the playing group. Sean, having a couple of guys like Azib's in the squad worth their weight in gold.
Yeah, absolutely. The bubble and squeak, as I would call it, perhaps the day today, Ian knows it looks glamorous, but it's just another day at the office for these guys. It's another day in the gym, another skill session, or another smash, whatever it is. They, you know, when you've played as long as Ian has, and you look forward to the games. That's what turns you on. So having characters in there will make you laugh or just lighten it up, or probably get things wrong, or then that's good to have. And I'm sure every team has one. You can imagine the sort of people that I had in there. Mike Phillips was always good for morale. He'd wind people like Lee Byrne up. Alan Wynne was a bit like Bambi running around the place. And, you had somebody like Barry Davis. Remember the fullback played for the Scarlets? He came and played a couple of years at the Ospreys. He was brilliant. He was brilliant in gauging the temperature of the squad. And if it needed a lift, he'd lift it. And I'm sure Ian's got characters like that. Simon Zebo, he mentioned. But every squad does, and they need to have one, don't they, for the balance?
100%. Like, people look at rugby players and they're like, oh, it's such a great job. But sometimes it's just like any other job. It can be a bit like Groundhog Day. And you just need characters on your team just to pick you up and just make you laugh. And you have your serious characters, you have your guys who are just laid back, chilled out, and then you have your funny men. And it's just all about creating a good dynamic on the team. And yes, Zeebs is definitely one of them.
You were saying you've been around a long time. You have been around a long time because some of the leaderboards from the Guinness Pro 14 have your name all over them. You're the third most games. You're the leading active player, I think, 204 games. Who's ahead of you?
For active games?
No, you're the leading active games. Who's ahead of you? Who's retired?
Oh, gee, I couldn't tell you. There's a Welsh prop or hooker, Reese Thomas.
Come in. Matthew Rees is right behind you.
Oh, is it Matthew Rees?
Sorry, Matthew Rees is right behind you on 202. Ross Ford.
John Muldoon.
John Muldoon. Miles ahead. You've got ages to go, right?
Yeah. I could catch him.
You could. You're in good thing.
And these appearances, Andy?
These are most games. Actually, good question.
Because hookers come off the bench, see. Hookers come off the bench, and they might have 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and like Keats would have played a lot more minutes than some of those hookers.
I have a few off the bench as well, so I'm not going to say.
I'm backing you up here, Ian.
I know.
Yes, confirmation from Mr. Redmond at his appearances. You're correct. And also most points. So active leader. You've a few to only 12 points to get to 1,500 in the championship. 86 to go to get the record from Dan Bigger. You have been around a long, long time, but you're still a young man.
Yeah. I'm 33. So at the moment, I'm going in. Oh, I still don't know. Are we still in last season or are we going into a new season? I still don't know yet. But I've got one more season. And as I said, I'm going to, as long as the team wants me and I'm still enjoying it, I just want to keep playing. I've gone through ups and downs, and at the moment, I'm absolutely loving rugby at the moment, and it's not a bad place to be playing rugby over here in Italy. We had training this morning, and then after training, I think we were finished at 12:30. I just went down to the beach, which is with the family, and we all had a nap together on the beach. And it's not if we can keep going that for another 2 or 3 years, it's going to keep me playing. So.
That's all right.
Yeah,
I think we might let you go. And a big congratulations from all of us here at your news. Best of luck.
Yeah, cheers, guys. Thanks a million. It was nice talking to you.
Thanks, Ian. Thanks.
See you guys. Bye.
That's good. Do you know what? I really like that thought of going off, doing a bit of a training session, my own personal rugby ball, and then just go to the beach with my kid and my wife, have a bit of a nap.
You could just see him there in training, kicking the ball up in the air and catching it, isn't it? Around the back, with little passes to himself. What else do you do, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it was good. Well done, Adam, with your live fact checking. That was good. Getting in
We
these.
finally just peek behind the curtain. We finally managed to master the private chat settings in here, so I'm jumping between that and the comments and all the rest. So apologies there to Craig Williams. Just got his question in for Ian just as he dropped off. So look, I'll drop him a text and see if he'll give us an answer there for Craig for next week.
It just brought back memories there, speaking to Ian about going to Italy. He's like Treviso is it's like a mini Venice, isn't it? I don't know if you've been there. It's a fantastic little place, little cafes and wine bars, and it's a lovely. And then you'd go and play Zebra or Viadana as it was, and you'd have these huge bits of Parmesan cheese and Parma ham. Oh my God, bottle of whatever it was, alcoholic beverage with a Parmesan cheese, Parma ham. I couldn't wait for final whistle in Italy.
It must be a great place to be right now, mustn't it? Because Dean Budd was on social media the other day, just walking around a deserted Venice. So you've got all these fantastic monuments and places that people heard to from around the world just to yourself. So it's not a bad place to be, and all the wine and cheese as well, Sean.
Yeah, so right now you can get out. I mean, that's something which you could definitely, if you were locked up properly, locked down for a time like that, just walking around the town, that's going to feel like a very special thing to do. Very special thing to do. But we should get into some meaty topics now. Gavin Mayers in the Telegraph is talking about having an emergency World Cup. The brainchild of Francis Barron, former RFU chief executive. A World Cup style tournament in the UK and Ireland next summer to spark up a grant fund to save struggling grassroots clubs in England. That's one of a number of ideas which are out there right now. Lauren, when you're looking at this, is it one of the better ideas? Is it?
To me, no, just because when you look at it on paper, it would involve the Lions tour being postponed, the global calendar alignment potentially being put on ice, all clubs and unions being affected in different ways. And I think the way it was sort of brought up today and the way you approached it was with staggering confidence, wasn't it? But when you look at, it's only the first time the Six Nations and SANS have come forward this week and made a joint statement about looking to better the game and combining the global calendar. So to sort of throw that out the window and use this as a solution seemed a little bit surprising to me. What do you think?
Staggering confidence. I love that.
Yeah, that was a feeling right there.
There are certain where staggering confidence is just natural confidence.
I think he did say, I have no doubt they'll all support this proposal and ensure implementation. I was thinking, well, to arrange a World Cup 12 months out, from when it's meant to be happening doesn't seem feasible, but I don't know, I might be negative about this.
I think, talk about gradual comeback from lockdown. What do? Just get every nation and supporters all in one place? I can't see it. I think Gav's got too much time on his hands in lockdown. He's inventing things. No, we're obviously making strides, and Adam would know this, to align unions. There's been an amazing opportunity and a one-off chance to do that. So I think it's more an opportunity to align the global season, get some sort of common sense, some common ideal on our structured season, and more importantly, player welfare and what the viewing public, not only on the TV, but those who vote with their feet by going to the games, they can understand what they need to go and watch, how they can prioritize, and when they can go. I think it's a real opportunity. So throwing that in the mix, wow, no, that would just throw it all out the kilter for me.
It doesn't seem very well thought through to me. It would also clash with Euro 2020, and we know as a rugby market, we can't compete with football. It just seems that we need to deal with what we have on the table, think about how we're going to restructure the Lions Tour, when is that going to happen, rather than, try and throw something new into the mix.
I do like the thinking behind it, though. I mean, put motivations to one side, but as I've probably said, and we've probably all agreed over the last couple of weeks, it's amazing the impact a global pandemic has made on everybody's thoughts in terms of aligning and how do we actually get together and do something and change the game for the future so that actually we work more in harmony. And that's like, look, on Friday, we confirmed the CVC deal, but the news to me earlier on was that release from Six Nations and Sanzar to say, look, we're going to be talking proactively. And the fact was that, like, they mentioned club competitions. They said all the things that every rugby fan and every rugby player and coach and people who work in the game, that's what you want, because, okay, so if you're Andy McGeady and you're a fan, you would love nothing better than, a lovely calendar of 46 polished weeks that all work in harmony to watch plenty of rugby. If you're Sean and Lauren, you want to make sure that you don't get stuck in a choice where am I going to try and work for club games or am I trying to work on international coverage and different things like that. It is like our whole ecosystem stands to benefit from two of the biggest power brokers for tournament wise in international rugby coming together. And I hope to see a lot more progress in a short space of time about what people think we actually can achieve if the hemispheres align, and if the club games north and south can align a little bit better, and if we can make international rugby a bit. If there's one thing that does my head in is in November, when rugby people get very excited about the Southern Hemisphere teams coming up to us, and then the football fans go, it's only a friendly. Why are you getting so excited?
I'm not biting. I'm not biting.
So Andy, what do you think?
I think that the line that really jumped out at me from that the joint statement by Six Nations and Sanzar was this, that it was very explicit. It is clear that ensuring the Rugby Championship and Six Nations take place in the same window of the calendar will be an important part of any plans. I mean, that to me is just such an important part, and if we have a general consensus in the game that that we can move some of the crown jewels around to make rugby better, that to me is just so positive. And if we have some big power brokers in the game who are thinking globally, like you've talked about before and on this pod, if they can really think globally and say, do you know what, guys, it's save the game time, not protect our own tiny piece of the pie. Yeah. That is so important.
I think they've got to try and work out a way. You talk about save the game there, to safeguard our game. We had Sean Maloney on last week. Is there a way we can help to safeguard Australian rugby and then club rugby? So I talk about Wales. Lauren would know this, that we have internationals. For some reason, we have internationals in November. Our club sides don't play because Wales are playing traditionally. All right, the clubs don't play, so they're less inclined then to move their fixtures to Friday nights. Some of them may not have lights or facilities or people who work, and therefore then we might have some bad weather, and their fixtures are sort of concerted towards the end of the season, and they lose players, they lose income. If an alignment of the global season can help, the undercard as well and the future of our game, then that would be amazing. Like kids playing, dare I say, in the summer months, because I spent many a year with my two boys in the mud, freezing cold, wet, rain, snow, where they don't play anymore. It was scarred for life.
But on top of that as well, like if you're a player, like think of some of the players who have come up from the Southern Hemisphere and still tried to play international rugby. So they've played a full Northern Hemisphere season, and then they go down for 2.5 months to play the June internationals, hang around for Rugby Championship, and then, oh, by the way, it's middle of September, we want you back up in a Northampton jersey or an Ulster jersey or whatever it might be. Like, it takes that pressure off those guys. And I've longed for the idea of the Six Nations starting in late March or even April, just for that better weather. I mean, look, we'll take the cold, atmospheric, dark nights for November, but see for Six Nations, if that's the crown jewel in the Northern Hemisphere, let's give it a drier track, please, because I don't want to ever watch another game like England-Scotland in this Six Nations again. Like, I don't tell you, there's no more rugby, don't give me that one.
It's quite interesting how the calendar will look as a whole, because Philip Brown, read some quote of his this week where he sort of devalued the summer and autumn tests and kind of said there's not a huge amount of importance to them. Whereas in Wales, I think we still, like you mentioned there, Sean, that perhaps the regional game is suffering at the expense of the international game, but our international game is thriving and we do sell out the stadium in the autumn. But might not be the same sort of interest outside of Wales and whether does this perhaps open the door for the Nations Championship to be put back on the table? Does that give perhaps other nations greater commercial market, more interest for perhaps more of a general audience? I don't know. It did. That was the first thing that sprung to my mind, especially because they did outline in that document that they want to be more inclusive for the second tier nations as well. Is that back on the table potentially?
There'll be. I think something along those lines. I mean, the fact they're talking about maybe doing the back-to-back windows, potentially October, November, where they come up here and then the northern teams go down there. I think that's how you can then sell a narrative, for want of a better term, where if you want to group everyone together and say, right, you get X points for winning these games, etc., and whatever they're playing for in the end, whether it's different seedings or if it's prize money, whatever concept they come up with, I think putting those back to back is a good idea. And also, again, I've said it a couple of times, I just love the idea of our teams going down in their summertime, because at the moment we're both playing in the north winter and the southern winter. And like, I remember hearing a story from Brian O'Driscoll after playing a game in somewhere in New Zealand where, it looked like Ireland might have won and then they get pumped in the last 15 minutes as always happened. And he's been interviewed on the pitch in lashing rain. It's like 2 degrees. And apparently he goes in afterwards and has a shower with his boots still on. I mean, are we showing off the best sides of our game by forcing people to play in the rain and the colder temperatures? So no, I think something needs to be done, and it just sounds like it's going to be done.
So here's a teeny tiny problem, right? This year, right?
Every time.
Australia and New Zealand. Do you really see Australian and New Zealand teams traveling to the Northern Hemisphere to play rugby this year?
We're talking about the long-term project.
I'm talking about this year. This year, I'm more interested in like a hastily whipped together, extended Six Nations, home and away. You could do something really crazy over the next 6 months if we wanted to.
I think if it was to happen, I mean, common sense would say, let's say the All Blacks coming up, the All Blacks play Wales in 3 tests, isolate themselves in the Vale of Glamorgan, where they can be isolated and not travel too far, train, and then play Wales in a 3-test series, or England or Australia play England in 3 tests, or Ireland, and they isolate in one place. I think that would be feasible to come on a tour or a tournament that early, and I think there's too many logistical combinations that could raise questions. If you were to put a few stringent measures on, it might work,
Yeah, and they'd have to commit that, like, given their own country's rules, then they'd have to quarantine going the other way as well. I mean, it would be a very, very long time in a very enclosed team environment, no matter if that team is moving around the world.
I don't think anybody's worried about people from New Zealand going around the country. They're absolutely fine.
23 of them or something.
Like their prime minister is not missing a beat when there's an earthquake going on and she's on live TV.
It's pretty impressive. I do have to fact check myself, by the way. I misquoted that statement earlier on. That was a comment by Murray Kinsella and not the statement itself. That is my bad. I like to be accurate on the show. But leading on to the next little piece, which is connected. We've talked about a potential emergency World Cup. We've talked about the Six Nations and SANZAR, putting a lot of things on the table here and doing it together, which is the most important part. Adam, you mentioned the CVC takeover. That's my word of the Guinness Pro 14.
Clearly going to have to fact check.
So after their investment of 27% of Premiership Rugby, they followed this up now with confirmation that CVC Investments taking 28% stake in Pro 14 Rugby. So there's a few questions that we haven't been able to get into on the pod previously for obvious reasons, because the commercials hadn't been nailed down. You weren't able to speak in it, to be frank.
Effectively, yeah.
Yeah. Which, for a comms guy, yeah.
I like to talk as well in my off-duty hours.
Yeah. So there are a few things. So to get the ball rolling here, right? There are people who won't have perhaps been paying attention to a few of these things. And it might seem odd that this deal has been released during a pandemic. That seems a little odd to me.
Yeah. So effectively, this deal has been in the works for, with CVC, I'd say, you're talking 12 to 18 months from first conversation to where we are today. And the idea of private investment has existed for a longer time. And I think what you're starting to see now is it's not just in rugby, but, Specs CVC are looking at football as well. And other private investment firms are getting involved with sport. And the reality around it is that, there's very few sports in the world generate the type of mega money that, say, football does. And a lot of sports need a bit of a helping hand without getting themselves into huge debt and various other things. And we've seen that sometimes with private benefactors, if their interest wanes, or depending on how sports clubs or teams have been run, that when somebody leaves, there's a big hole, no money left, and all the ambition has gone, and there's nothing there. So it's really tricky for sport to get the funding that it needs, satisfy all its stakeholders, and keep growing its sport at all levels. So I think that's been sort of a key ambition over the last sort of short to medium term. And now that CVC have come in, I think we see they clearly have a strategy around rugby. And I think what's really important, I suppose, from my aspect to kind of clarify, is that they've come in and they're partners, and they have a seat at the table, and they have a considerable say in a certain amount of things, but also they've got to work in partnership with the unions, which is now Italy, by the way, which is great that Italy are now a shareholder in Celtic Rugby. And they'll work with Martin and I, our CEO, they'll work with the unions. And, there's a lot of actually good working plans in place. And now we're just bringing in an extra member to the team who's going to give us a bit more, I'm going to give the unions and the tournament a bit more resource. And they're also going to bring a certain amount of commercial expertise. And we'd be crazy. Any sports competition would be crazy to kind of turn our nose at anything like that.
Okay, so let's do a bit of ask questions around the table. But so I asked one question.
I thought we finished.
No, we're not. Sean, you have a question here.
I got three, but I think I'll probably go with the obvious one to start, Adam, and that's we hear about the percentage involvement, the seat at the table, that there's that word investment comes in, and the look. Secure the future of our game. But for the average fan, like my mates go and watch the Ospreys, and they used to go in and they get their whatever experience it is. What can they expect? What does this mean for the average fan going to a regional game, a Guinness Pro 14 game? Is that going to be uplifted in any way? Will they see it in a material, a hands-on feel thing? How is it going to change for the average fan?
Yeah, so I suppose what we have in place at the moment is a 4-year strategy. Again, words that will just bore the heads off people and stuff like that. But there's so much stuff that we want to do from a league point of view to facilitate teams and give them access to services and suppliers that they either might not be able to afford, or that they could benefit if the whole league is going to one place to get supports and certain things. For us, it'll allow us to market ourselves better. It'll allow us to do better content. It'll allow us to, I mean, this is just tangible stuff. It will allow us to better resource referees. It will allow us to put better tech in around the games, you know, so whether that's investing in more stuff around the Hawkeye systems that we have there, anything we can do to improve the game for players and, you know, by association, that's fans as well. I mean, there are those things that we can now afford to invest in terms of facilities, hardware, all that sort of stuff. It will be a gradual change over the next couple of years, but I think what you'll see is a more premium look and feel to the entire brand. I think you'll just see, like, we've done a lot of stuff, even this type of content where we're doing a live stream. I mean, 18 months ago, we didn't even do a podcast. I'd say, you know, in the next 18 months, there could be all sorts of different types of broadcast type content coming out of what we do and how we work better with clubs and players to promote them and to really celebrate our athletes and stuff. So it's going to be an awful lot of little things that get much better. And in turn, would hope that increases the values. And a lot of people think that's there to be done. And with greater values, that should be replicated in commercial deals, broadcast deals. And that means more money eventually ends up with the unions and the teams. And that's where, you know, everyone being on the same page and knowing how to spend those resources wisely. And I think you'll see, you know, in 2 or 3 years' time, you know, I think the competition has taken a big leap in the last 4 years on and off the field. But I think it'll be more tangible over the next 2 to 3, 4 years.
Where's that little drop that we had for when you're becoming the company man?
This was the largest audience to ever witness an inauguration, period.
Thank you. Excellent. Well played. Lauren, he's getting a bit comfortable there.
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions. It's obviously, you know, I welcome the news as well. And the fact they actually went for the same percentage as they did before the pandemic, I thought was great, you know. And I think people might have been more forgiving perhaps had it not happened because of the coronavirus, but you know, the fact it has is great. I'm just wondering how it looks from a Welsh perspective, first of all, in terms of like WRU have a share, and then does that automatically go to the regions, or could they use it elsewhere? And as well, Martin's talked about the importance of South Africa and how that was you know, an attractive prospect for CVC and potentially expanding the league further. You know, is that a real possibility? Because I know he said that, you know, sort of dismissed the British and Irish league because, you know, this is a different point to what the European competition is.
Yeah. So on the first point, I suppose the key thing to sort of understand for people is that the tournament is being owned by, traditionally or previously, has been the Celtic nations, so Scotland, Wales, Ireland. Now the Italians are in. So everybody, all those unions effectively say they own a house and they've sold a percentage of the house. So the money goes to them, but you know, how each union disperses that and which way they work, they'll all do things slightly differently. But I think if future investment comes along the line of Six Nations as well, and that we're also hearing about, then I think what you've got is 4 unions who are very keen, and at least 3 of them who are very detailed in how they work with their clubs. And in Wales, that's actually taken a really big step forward, because you've got the PRB now that will decide the funding, and now you've got more funds to then go into those places. So I think the other thing to understand is that, like, you know, particularly in the Celtic nations, none of the unions are in the business of letting clubs, you know, underperform or cutting them adrift at this stage. And I think that's why this will be really helpful from that respect. But I think everybody knows, like, you know, we're talking about aligning calendars and stuff like that earlier on. Like, Guinness Pro 14 will benefit greatly from less overlap with international rugby. I think everybody knows that. And I think, you know, people always go, oh, you'll see more international players play. Well, actually, there's another side to that as well, is that if you overlap less with internationals, if you're Sean and you're putting your squad together in May and June, you probably need 5 or 6 less full-time bodies, because you don't need those experienced older pros to come in when you lose a lot of your players to Wales and stuff like that. So there's a lot of different ways the tournament will benefit, and in Wales in particular, I think. But also then to your second point around British and Irish League or more South Africans, I think at this stage, and I'm just echoing what Martin and I said, is that I think it's more likely that you see expansion into South Africa with sort of bigger name teams rather than, the British and Irish League, which has been talked about. Because I think the question, and I'll throw it back to you guys as well, is if you have a British and Irish League, what becomes of Europe? Because what makes some of those games special when Scarlets go to Bath, or when Leinster travel over to play Leicester or Sarries, when that becomes really regular, then what's the point in European competition if you're just there to play the French?
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Europe is pretty unique. Having experienced it, I welcome what the South African teams have brought to our league, particularly the Cheetahs. I think the Kings have shown an improvement, but this can only benefit that, those South African teams sort of improving. We've seen how Benetton and Zebra have improved. It took them a while, but I think this is massive for that. And if Martin has backed that and come out and said that, South Africa are the world champions, for goodness sake. There's a lot of players down there in South Africa, and all of a sudden, if we start to entice bigger name South African teams, then can you imagine that? That would be amazing. So I think it's great news. You've answered all my three questions, really, Adam, because my second one was going to be about coaching and how that looks, from my squad. Well, you've said indirectly, if we can get better values and enhance the game and get better products and this, that, and the other, then the investment will come. And then broadcasting was another one, and that's an obvious one. And I liked what you said about innovative, new ways of thinking with broadcasting, enhancing the product for our production companies. And I'm sure I heard you said we've really got to hammer home analysis and expert punditry. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's the big investment angle that really hasn't been hammered home in the media reporting of this. We put it out on Twitter earlier on because we have had questions about this before. So question from Peter Brophy. There's talk of midweek games. Is there real talk of midweek games?
Is there talk of midweek games? If talk is happening on social media, then there can be talk. But in terms of where we're at, I think we've got 21 regular season rounds now.
Yeah.
And that's down from 22 when we were Pro 12. I think there's probably a formula where we'd play less, where you could go down to 18 regular season rounds. And again, if we're talking about the international calendar aligning to help out the whole game in general, well, then what can we do in the club game to make our game fit better? And again, we talk about, if you're overlapping less with international rugby, that will enhance all the product. Like, that will enhance Premiership. It'll enhance the Guinness Pro 14. So if we get midweek games, I'll be absolutely stunned. I don't think anyone can fathom how that works and that coincides with good rugby, because we even make sure that bare minimum, you've got to have 5 clean days in between fixtures. And even when that happens, you've got to have a really good reason to, wedge teams together like that. And you'll see that actually occurs in rounds 5 and 6 in Europe when they bring those in out. There's always a club that turns around and says, "Oh, hang on a second, you're making us play on Sunday and Friday. That's not fair." All this kind of stuff, So look, midweek games, I just don't know what planet we'll be on if that comes to pass.
Okay. One more. Fergal JPC asked 3 questions. I'm going to blend them a bit. So first thing is, do you think that the CVC cash will go into development and grassroots, or will it go towards what he describes as Pro 14 deficits and development of the brand? Right? Now, there's a lot in there. So I'll first thing is, do you have control centrally over where this cash injection goes?
No, there's a fund for the tournament operations and the marketing and all of that stuff that we've already discussed. And then there are shares that go to each of the 4 unions. And that is spent by those unions on anything from grassroots to community to development to extra funding straight into their professional teams at the elite level. So, it's not money going directly straight into the bank accounts of every single team. it's going through the unions, and then it gets distributed through there. So, you know, I can't speak for what each of the 4 unions will spend it. They'll all spend it a little bit differently. But I think as well, given everything that's going on at the moment, it's reassuring to know that, you know, rugby has that little bit of a safety net now, which a lot of us probably were concerned may not have been, given everything that's going on.
And if I'm a Cheetahs or a Kings fan, what is the bounty, for want of a better term, that comes on the South African end, because we haven't included them in the previous discussion about the benefactors, really.
Yeah, so I think for those teams, they'll get the advantage of all the other elements that I think we've discussed about in terms of the league improving various services, and becoming a little bit more premium, and any increases in commercial revenues and broadcast revenues, because they all go into distributions that'll go back to the clubs. So they don't maybe get an initial slice of the pie, but the idea is, and I suppose there's another one that I've seen people talk about, is they're saying, well, you know, you give up 28% and then you're giving up 28% of your profits year on year. Well, actually what you're doing there is you're getting together with people to make the pie bigger. And if the pie is bigger, then, you know, the 28% actually, you know, you're not out of pocket, if you can follow what I'm saying. So that's the job. And you make the pie bigger, then, you know, the South African teams will get their distributions as well. So fingers crossed, it's good news for everyone.
Fingers crossed indeed. We'll leave that one there for this week, but it is now on the table since the deal has been signed. So fire in your questions. We are here to serve.
This was the largest audience to ever witness an inauguration, period.
That's a very good way to round off that segment. You were far too comfortable there. We'll have to make it more uncomfortable next week.
No, I'm very uncomfortable with Sean Holley trying to get in some endorsement there with that. He's taking far too many sips of that.
Sorry, you know, I bang, as you can see, I've been in the sun a lot today. And I need my fluid. And I finished my cup of tea, and my family aren't bringing me another one.
It's shocking. Very badly trained. We did talk about this previously, and we never rounded off the conversation. And it was a bit of work done by fans voting for the team of the regions. Adam, you've sent this around. There's a lot of big names in this.
Yeah, I'll call it. Look. So it was a nice little sort of collaboration between the regions and WRU and a company called Dupol. So I think in the end they got like 25,000 votes in on this, but essentially each region, all the fans voted for their ultimate 15 for that region of the professional era, and then all those players became nominees to be, you know, the ultimate Welsh regional 15. So I'll run through it. Your front row: Gethin Jenkins, Ken Owens, Adam Jones. Second row: Tyke Byrne, Alan Wynne Jones, and captain. Back row: Josh Navidi, Justin Tipperick, and number 8, Toby Falatau. 9 and 10, Mike Phillips and Stephen Jones. Left wing, right wing, you've got Shane Williams and Alex Cuthbert, Jamie Roberts and Jonathan Davis in the centres, and Liam Williams a full back. And they even voted in a fairly familiar looking bench here for Sean: Duncan Jones, Richard Hibbard, John Davies of Scarlets, Luke Charteris, Martin Williams, Dwayne Peel, Dan Bigger, and Lee Byrne. I think that team's a match for pretty much anybody on their day, isn't it?
I have an issue with some of these things, you know.
Oh yes.
I mean, you've got 5 Cardiff Blues in the 23. They've never come close to winning the competition. Hello?
Yeah. But this is a fan vote, Sean.
I know it's a fan vote, and that
popularity contest. You know that.
You've got to think, you know, really carefully about. It's all very well having your favourite players, but what is the vote for? It's your All-Star Regional Ultimate 15. So is that the ones that have played in the Guinness Pro 14 or all competitions, played for Wales? And I think that gets lost a little bit for me. And I'm not trying to be Osprey bias here, because Scarlets have won the competition a couple of times, reached the final, and clearly all of these are top line players, but there's been servants to the regional game who participated in the in the tournament, the competition so much and contributed so much and that's where I lose sight a little bit when fans vote, because they go for the names, don't they? So yeah,
I think Josh Navidi, though, right? You said Cardiff Blues. I think Josh Navidi is a really good example of what you've just said, because like early part of his career, he's been that stalwart, that guy who's always in the team sheet week in, week out, and it's the latter part of his career where he's kind of become an international.
Yeah, Jonathan Thomas. Jonathan Thomas holds 4 Celtic titles. Played at 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 for his region. Played over 70 times for his country. Grand Slam winner. I mean, that to me, if you're voting for a regional team and somebody who adds value, was value for money, played a number of positions, embellished the tournament, supported the tournament, loyal to his region. Yes, he's an Ospreys player, but if I was voting, it would be someone like that, So. Yeah,
I thought Tommy Bowe would have got in on the right wing ahead of Alex Cuthbert.
Well, because Tommy Bowe, covered 2 teams and was successful at 2 teams, and then was a Grand Slam winner. So, again, you go, if you were to look at the 25,000 voters, how many are from a certain part of Wales?
Lauren,
there is an argument for choosing a regional 15 during a test window, I suppose. The likes of Bowe, as you mentioned, Tagburn as well. It was the region that launched really their international career, perhaps, rather than the other way around. But then you look at people like Ken Owens and Justin Tipuric. They've been just as loyal to both. Justin Tipuric, Martin Williams would have been a tough call. And can I just say, if you're going to pick Stephen Jones, then you've got to pick Dwayne Peel. Haven't you? Stephen Jones and Mike Phillips together? Or you go Phillips, Bigger, Jones and Peel. Do you look at the way you're playing, or is it purely on merit of the player? So many questions. Shane Williams.
It's a tough one, isn't it?
It's interesting to me though. Tadburn's shining star still burns bright in Wales, I think.
Yeah,
looking at this,
it is
phenomenal.
We have had more foreign players who have really shown for us. Perhaps it's not truly reflected in this. The likes of Regan King, Simon Easterby, Tito, Xavier Rush. It's quite Welsh focused, and actually, we've had some great inputs over the years.
That's one I'd love to see put together from some expert minds and analysts. People who've been there, picked the teams in the past.
I'll do you one.
Yeah, I'd love to see actually.
It'd be a great team.
The Welsh import 15, the Irish import 15. You could do one for Premiership if you wanted. Scotland, yeah, you could probably knock a decent one out of Scotland as well.
Oh, you absolutely could.
Yeah.
Italy, actually, what a team that would be.
Yeah, you definitely could. Brendan Williams starting at fullback, definitely.
Yeah.
Oh, well, you go back further. Campo played in Italy for a while, didn't he?
He did, yeah.
Okay. Right, homework time. McGeady, you've got Italy. I'll take Ireland.
Jesus.
John's got Wales.
Yeah.
And Lauren, if you haven't been scared off by tonight's appearance, you can definitely do Scotland.
Okay.
I'm writing it down. Done. Yeah. Okay, this is good. Before we start to leave, we have a few things to plug this week because people are being very, very active on other shows. Lauren, you have a new pod.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I do. What's it called? Off Air. We've just recorded our first episode with Laura Woods. I think, to be honest, I was just missing, doing something that I was really passionate about, and that often that's broadcasting, talking to people in the game. So whether it's presenters or players, we're just going to be interviewing people who we're interested in, really, and I guess hope the audiences too.
I must say, I did give it a listen. I think it was on Sunday night, and in fairness, Laura Woods, I think there's a lot of stuff in there that just doesn't matter whether you're male or female. Anyone looking to get into broadcasting or journalism, there's just some good lessons that you've got to learn, but also just an attitude. And she had a line about when she was working on 10-pin bowling, and she treated, talking to the people there when she's doing interviews like she was speaking to Jose Mourinho, because she says at that time it was the biggest thing in her life, and actually for the people she's speaking to, it's the biggest thing in their life. And I don't know if, when you're at home watching on TV, if people actually always realize, how important you might see a new face, and to them, this is like the biggest moment in their career to go and speak to the man in the match. So, I thought it was well worth a listen. So, looking forward to seeing who else you get on, Lauren. I believe Mr. Holley's available for podcasts these days.
I would happily
Busy man.
do it. Look, I love doing the podcast, and there's no secret to it for me other than you want your listeners to say things to you like, it was just like I was listening in on somebody else's conversation. And I think if you get that, which is what Lauren's podcast was like for me, then you're not going to be far off, and I think that's what we try to do on here. We've got a good relationship. We banter around. We have our opinions, but it's just like we're having a chat, and that's what people, I think, subscribe to. I think they like to listen in on that.
And how is Justin Marshall for a chat?
Man, he's outstanding. I could have probably spoken a couple more hours. I've got so many stories about Justin Marshall. It's I'd have to write the book, or we'll do an audio book. But he's a great fella. He's a world-class player. He's a world-class bloke. He's like a man's man, if you forgive me, Lauren, whatever that means. But he's a world-class broadcaster as well. I think he's brilliant on his commentary. He's got a good viewpoint. Always did, even as a player. But he's just got that way about him, he's, if ever he falls in horse manure, he's going to come up smelling of roses. He has that about him. He's quite proud of the fact that he used to carry a mullet and highlight his hair, but he's slightly embarrassed about it now. He's gone out and trademarked his name Bumfer, which is what he says when there's a big hit in the game. He didn't know what it meant, but he trademarked. He's now made a beer with it. He's just brilliant. I got so many stories about him. And we need him in the game. And I'm looking forward to listening to some Super Rugby when New Zealand play now in the middle of June, and he'll be putting his dulcet tones on commentary.
Do you know what? He's someone we should get on this pod for when Super Rugby Aotearoa returns.
Let's do it, because there's a few stories that I held back from my Tuesday Club podcast, which I love to hit you with.
Excellent.
And I have to say, give that Tuesday Club episode a listen, because I found it very interesting hearing him talking about how he accidentally ended up brewing his own beer during lockdown, and he tried to give it away for free, but got stopped by the Fun Club. And he's called it Bumfer, isn't he?
Bumfer, yeah.
Bumfer beer. Send some over. No fun police here. Just real police. I've got a little plug. Just anyone at a loose end tomorrow afternoon. Did a panel last week and one tomorrow at Analytica 2020. It's the IRFU guys for in aid of charity. It's a virtual conference, so 5 or 6 panels over the afternoon. Get yourself a cup of tea, sit back. Some of it's nerdy, some of it's not nerdy and just good fun. But in a really good cause. It's for Pieta House here in Ireland. Adam, got some comments.
We have a few comments in here. Chester Donnelly has put in a couple of different questions, but I'll pop this one up because it's directed towards Sean. Sean Holley, should Ospreys move to their home to the Knoll? I'll probably add to that. What do you think? Is Liberty Stadium the future, or is it a different new stadium, or the Knoll?
There's a lot of discussions, or certainly rumours, if you like, around here of a new purpose build in the Llandarcy area, which is the Ospreys training base, just out sort of between Neath and Swansea, just off the M4. That would make more sense to me. Chester, obviously a Neath fan, and I had great times at the Knoll with the Ospreys in the early days, and Neath obviously is a very traditional club, but in the professional era, it just wouldn't work. There's no car parking around the Knoll, really. The changing rooms, you can't swing a cat in there, let alone give somebody a rubber dub, or the showers don't work that well. I'm sure they do, but no, I think just for the whole entourage of a professional game now and the broadcasting, it's great atmosphere at the Knoll, and the players love playing at it. It was great to coach there, and I played there many years ago. But I think for the professional entity, it's just not quite. Some of those things are just not quite up to scratch. And I think anyway in Llandarcy there's a new offing, which would make sense now for the Ospreys to do that. Smaller capacity, state of the art, great for broadcasting, great for other things around that the rugby crowd can enjoy. Just off the motorway. If that happens, then we could see a bit of the resurrection of the Ospreys.
Yeah, I think it's funny that you say like the facilities just at the Knoll probably aren't where you'd need them to be for a lot of different reasons. I know Leinster sent their team over there before Christmas, and apparently the parents who travelled all had a fantastic time, which sounds like they were in a proper rugby club.
It's a proper rugby club. It's a proper rugby club. Great atmosphere. The crowd's right on you. Great support. Just for those professional rugby sporting things, you can't quite do it anymore, unfortunately.
Lauren, was it the Cheetahs game or the Leinster game you were reporting on?
Both actually. And to be fair to Leinster, I think they stayed and showered at the Knoll, whereas the Cheetahs got on the bus back to the hotel. They're obviously used to a warmer climate.
Very good. Right, let's have a quick one. Craig Williams. What have we got here? Thoughts on the Dragons rebuild plus Aled Davies to Saracens. Do you know, can I just kick off on Aled Davies? I think he's a very tidy little player, but Wales are absolutely spoiled for riches at scrum half. So, I mean, it's inevitable some of these guys, if they're good enough to play first team rugby, there's only 4 regional teams. You know, you can't play everybody.
I agree with you, Aled. He's a fine player, you know, but we've got such talent in Wales at scrum half. I mean, he's the sort of guy who you think would do well at Saracens, you know, and you see it all the time. But we've got world-class scrum halves, world-class. We've got world-class scrum halves who aren't in the Welsh squad, you know, and Aled is probably one of them now. Dragons rebuild. Slow burner, but I like it. Dean's a right man. As you know, I worked with him. It's just getting that mass of young Welsh talent that they've got there and almost nurturing them through, almost babysitting them through and getting the right guys with them, the right coaching team, the right experienced guys, weathering a couple of storms, getting little wins along the way, allowing them to have a bit of time. Then comes the investment, then builds the crowd, then builds the squad. Do you know what? They could be anything, the Dragons. And Dean needs time. They need to give him time. And he'll deliver. So I think it's a real great thing that's happening there. And we should all back it. You know, it's great for the league too.
What do you make of the Jonah Holmes signing, Lauren?
Yeah, I was reading his comments today, and you know, he was quite honest in saying the reason he's gone is, you know, to continue with his ambitions to play for Wales. So it makes sense, doesn't it? Because he was on the fringe, I think, of the Six Nations squad during February. Don't think he actually played during that competition in the end. So, you know, if you're on the fringe of the squad and you think you're still young, you're thinking you've got an international career ahead of you, then it makes sense. And they probably need players with a bit more experience around some of those younger boys coming through. So works from both ends for me.
Stuff. And we got one last question. It's coming from Dan Hadley. Thoughts on Nick Tompkins, Sean? So presumably Mr. Tompkins is being looked at to return or to go play his rugby in Wales if he's going to be a current Welsh international. Is that the way it's going to have to work?
It's going to have to, yeah. It's going to have to, and even more so now with Hadley Parks departing to Japan, he becomes very important. He showed enough for me in his early performances for Wales that he's got a bit of X factor. Certainly got a little bit of hustle, bustle, something about him. You know, was involved in some big plays, some great tries from Wales. Made a few errors, but you can expect that. And he's one that I'm pretty sure Wayne Pivac will want to nail down because he gives you options. I still think we'll be looking now at options to replace Hadley Parks. Does Owen Williams come back after injury? Where does Owen Watkin play? And then a few others. But certainly for me, Tompkins now needs to be cemented as part of our squad because he's got that something with ball in hand that, you know, it's difficult to find. He's got good turn of pace and gets on the end of things. So yeah, he's one for me. Yeah.
It's good because it'll be a natural step up from Championship rugby for him, and he probably needs that at this stage in his career.
Ooh.
Yeah, that was cheap. I admit it. Sorry, all the Saracens fans listening. There won't be any Saracens fans listening. That's a wrap. Thank you very much to Ian Keatley for joining us from Italy. That was really good. Thank you, Lauren Jenkins, for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sean Holley. Thank you, Adam Redmond. Thank you, all of you, giving us your time, whether live this evening or listening back. That was Under the Sticks, brought to you by Big Red Cloud. My name is Andy McGeady. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you soon.
They call me cheetah, cheetah, cheetah. Ooh, cheetah, cheetah, cheetah. Alla mamma cheetah, cheetah, cheetah.